I stood outside the door, listening to my husband complaining to his new lover. I'm tired of her. Without shedding a tear or causing a scene, I packed my bags and thought, it's over. We had been together for 6 years, starting from scratch. We lived in a basement without windows. We would split a loaf of bread into 2 meals. After the Alex Group's IPO, Alex emerged as a financial mogul. I was waiting for Alex to fulfill his promise to marry me, but in his office, I saw him passionately kissing his young secretary. The man sneered and lifted the secretary's chin arrogantly. She's been with me for so long. Who else would marry her? It's just an affair. You and I are just using each other. Later, I broke up with Alex and married someone else. But Alex smashed my wedding to pieces. Emily, if you dare to marry him, I'll make him pay with his life. Emily, don't go. Sarah grabbed my hand, her eyes full of complexity, even if Alex made a mistake. So what? You've been together for 6 years. For 6 years. Alex and I had lived together and built the Alex Group from the ground up. Today, I received a blurry photo on my phone. Alex was lost in lust and kissing the cheek of a strange woman at 6:30 tonight. There will be everything you want to know in Alex's office. Dare to come. This provocative text message shattered all my self-esteem. In fact, I understood everything, but I always made excuses for myself. The Alex Group was on the right track, but Alex never mentioned marrying me. I was already 29 years old, and in my culture, that made me feel like I was running out of time. I had spent my entire youth on Alex. All the time and energy I'd invested was so great that even Sarah couldn't bear to let me know the truth. I forced myself to stay calm and walk towards the door, exactly because we've been together for 6 years. I want to know everything even more. There was a crack in the office door. I could see everything happening inside without even opening it. Alex was kissing the young and beautiful secretary. The secretary was giggling in his arms. Alex, what will Emily think if she finds out? Alex sneered and lifted the secretary's chin arrogantly. She's been with me for so long. Who else would marry her? It's just an affair. You and I are just using each other. In my line of sight, the secretary smiled brightly, hugged Alex, and looked at me with a triumphant gaze. I took a step back, feeling dazed, and turned to leave, trying not to let anyone see my staggering. Emily, Sarah caught up with me and gritted her teeth. Alex is really a jerk. Let me teach him a lesson. But I pulled her away. Let's go back. I sat in the car, hiding all my embarrassment behind a blank expression. This was probably what adult love was like. Decorum and calmness had long seeped into my bones. Alex, if you got tired of me and wanted to break up, you could have just done it. Why did you have to make it so embarrassing? He knew I couldn't tolerate betrayal, yet he still challenged my bottom line. I stared out the window, letting the blur of passing buildings mirror the chaos inside me. Did Alex think he had me wrapped around his finger, that I would never leave him? But I really couldn't stand any betrayal. Emily, what's wrong? The assistant was suddenly called by me and looked confused. I said calmly, help me arrange for someone to move the things packed from this room to my house in the south of the city. Hearing this, the assistant's eyes widened in shock, looking at the dozen large boxes in front of him. He said after a long while, Emily, is there some misunderstanding between you and Alex? Although Alex and I weren't married, everyone in the Alex Group considered me Alex's wife. After all, we had been working together for so many years, whether in terms of interests or feelings. We were already inseparable. This house was the wedding house that Alex had promised me. The assistant couldn't not know that. But now I was moving out. The assistant guessed that something had happened between Alex and me, but he didn't dare to ask more. He tried to dissuade me. Emily, it's not easy for you and Alex to have been together for so many years. Alex has achieved so much now. Everything is so good. My eyes turned cold as I looked at the assistant. Then do you know what's going on between Alex and his secretary? The assistant wasn't surprised. As Alex's personal assistant, how could he not know everything? Emily, men like to play around, but they will eventually return to their families. Alex is just having some fun with Lily. That's how you men think, I sneered. As an assistant, I just hope you can do your job well. The assistant stopped talking, but his eyes showed disapproval when he looked at me. After everything was packed, I turned to leave, but at the door, I saw Alex's Rolls Royce. The car window rolled down, and Alex's handsome and gentle face appeared in front of me, but the bright lipstick mark on his shirt was extremely glaring. Lily, his secretary, was sitting beside him obediently at this time, but when Alex wasn't looking, the woman gave me a triumphant smile. Why is there a moving truck at the door? Did you buy new furniture? Alex got out of the car and asked casually. Just then, the movers came out with my luggage. Alex's eyes instantly turned sharp. What are you doing? Our eyes met, and the movers looked at each other in confusion. My face was expressionless. I told them to keep moving, and then looked at the man. Since Alex has a new lover, I'm making room for you. Let's talk sometime. After saying that, I turned to leave, but Alex suddenly grabbed my hand. You know, Alex pursed his thin lips and then looked at Lily coldly. Lily's face turned pale, and she began to explain. Alex, I don't know anything. Playing the innocent act didn't work on me. I shook off Alex's hand and looked at Lily coldly. Wasn't it you who sent that ambiguous photo? And you asked me to catch you two in the office. Otherwise, should I ask the company's technical department to check the phone's IP address to clear your name? Having been in the business world for so many years, Lily's tricks were nothing in my eyes. Alex, did you fall for her looks or just because she's young? But no matter what, the fact of his affair was undeniable. Emily, I was just having some fun with her. Alex's voice came from behind. The man didn't care that Lily was still there. I turned around and met Lily's jealous and angry eyes. She then looked at Alex, her eyes full of sadness and accusation. Alex, I just like you ... Alex didn't give her a single glance. His dark eyes looked straight at me. Emily, we've been together for so many years. This is just a small mistake. A small mistake. I stopped and looked at Alex, the once young and reckless boy under my cultivation had become mature, stable, and considerate. But at this moment, his true colors seemed to be revealed. An affair was unforgivable. If it weren't for Lily's ambiguous photo, I would have always trusted him. But if it hadn't been this mistake, would there be another one? Without Lily, would there be another woman? I couldn't imagine that the man I had slept next to for 6 years could make such a casual excuse for betraying me. I took a deep breath and said calmly, what if I made the same mistake? Recently, David has been ... Before I could finish my words, Alex interrupted me angrily. Emily, how dare you? Then he thought he was making a concession and said, Lily will disappear from the Alex group tomorrow. Are you satisfied now? The naive Alex from back then seemed to appear in front of me, but I no longer walked towards him with a smile. Even talking to the man in front of me seemed to have become difficult. Let's both take some time to cool off. Finally, I left this sentence and turned to get into the car without a trace of nostalgia. I heard Alex kick Lily hard behind me, seemingly blaming her for telling me the truth. I closed my eyes wearily and told the driver to take me to my place, but I never expected to see a familiar figure. David seemed just as surprised to see me. Emily, his eyes swept over the moving truck behind me and the movers coming and going. He asked tentatively, "You've moved out?" I nodded slightly. On a normal day, I would have exchanged a few polite words with this business partner. But now I was so exhausted that I just wanted to rest. "Yeah, I'll be living here for a while. I'll treat you to dinner another day, Mr. David," I said calmly. David seemed to see my exhaustion and nodded. Then he smiled and said, "I live nearby too. Maybe we'll see each other often in the future. Emily, I have some things to take care of at the company today, so I won't disturb you." "Emily," I nodded and then went inside and lay down on the master bed, letting the assistant outside arrange for the movers to place the things properly. 6 years. Even if you raise a dog, you'll develop feelings, let alone a person. The Alex of the past was just a rebellious young man, and I was a fresh graduate who was being beaten down by society. During a robbery, Alex saved me. He got a deep cut on his hand from the robber. I felt guilty and took good care of him until he recovered. Over time, our relationship seemed to develop naturally. After being together for a year, Alex wanted to start a business, but neither of our families was wealthy. After much thought, I made up my mind to quit my job at a big company and start from scratch with him. It took us a full 5 years to go from a basement in the New York suburbs to the city center. Before I could make excuses that the company wasn't stable and Alex didn't have the time to think about marriage. But then in the years since the company went public and has been developing steadily, Alex never once mentioned marriage to me. This really made me feel pessimistic, but I just thought Alex was waiting for the right time. If it weren't for that photo from Lily. Thinking about it, none of it mattered anymore. I sent a text message to Alex, asking him to meet the day after tomorrow. Then I hired a lawyer to untangle our business assets and shares between Alex and me step by step. Beyond our relationship, Alex and I also had a lot of joint assets, such as real estate, jewelry, company project shares, stocks, and so on. When I placed in front of Alex one by one these property detailed documents divided by the lawyer and my resignation letter, the man in front of me became even angrier. "Emily, do you really have to take it this far?" I looked calmly at Lily next to him and said softly, "Alex, let's part on good terms." He said he would fire Lily, but it turned out he kept her by his side. Even when we broke up, Alex brought her with him after 6 years of relationship. I couldn't even get a bit of respect from him. At this moment, I suddenly felt a bit ridiculous, and at the same time, I felt disgusted with Alex. Alex's eyes were cold. "Emily, think clearly if you don't want to be the president's wife of the Alex Group. There are plenty of people who do." Hearing this, I laughed. "Like your little lover here. Isn't that why I'm making room for them?" "Alex, if you want to play around, go ahead, without me to hold you back. Not just Lily. With your current status, there will be countless women like her who will cling to you. But I'm narrow-minded. I can't tolerate a speck of dust in my eyes. If you really want to fight to the bitter end, as an insider, I can easily find the loopholes in the Alex Group. Do you want to give it a try?" It wasn't easy for the Alex Group to get to where it is today, even if Alex didn't want to lose me as an important member and have half of his property divided. He had to weigh which was worse, bankruptcy or losing half. "Emily, you've changed." Alex finally signed his name on those documents, but his face looked terrible. I put away the documents and said calmly, "Yes, We've both changed. After I said that, Alex's face looked even worse. When I came out of the coffee shop, there was a torrential downpour outside. I didn't drive, and in this heavy rain, with people coming and going, I couldn't get a taxi at all. I was thinking about whether to wait for the rain to stop or take the subway or bus to go back when suddenly a familiar voice came from behind me. Emily. I turned around and saw David in casual clothes. He was tall and straight, with gentle eyes. Both his looks and height made him stand out in the bustling crowd. Mr. David, I greeted him and exchanged a few pleasantries. David looked at me standing at the door and seemed to see something. He smiled and said, I'm just about to drive back. Would you like a ride, Emily? I nodded a little sheepishly. I really didn't want to stay outside for long. Thank you, Mr. David. In the car, David's eyes were a bit dim. He asked curiously, what were you doing there, Emily? Just dealing with some things. And I'm not Emily from the company anymore. You don't have to call me that, Mr. David, I said, pursing my lips. I didn't mind if outsiders knew I had resigned. Almost as soon as I resigned, my name would be removed from the company system. After all, the resignation of an insider was not a trivial matter. It was easy for someone with ulterior motives to find out. David was a bit surprised. He seemed to think of the way I moved to the community a few days ago and guessed something, but he didn't say anything. He just said calmly, well, leaving an uncomfortable place is the only way to move forward to something better. I don't know what to call you now. The man seemed to be in a dilemma. What should I call you? Emmy. When I heard these words, my eyebrows twitched, and I turned to look at him. David immediately smiled. Just kidding. What are your plans for the future, Emily? Before I could think about it, my phone rang frantically, interrupting my thoughts. Looking at the display on my phone, I seemed to anticipate something. Sure enough, as soon as I answered the phone, my mom's voice roared from the other end. Emily, why did you break up with Alex? Alex is so good. You're already 29 years old. If you don't marry him, who else do you want to marry? I could also hear my brother's voice on the phone. Yeah, what's wrong with Alex? Why did you break up with him? He's the president of the Alex group now. Sis, don't be silly. We've endured so many tough times. You were almost going to be his wife. I clenched my phone tightly, even without putting it on speaker. My mom's roar could be heard clearly through the phone screen. I glanced at David next to me. He closed his eyes, as if pretending to rest and not hear, but the embarrassment still spread in my heart. Mom, I'll decide this matter myself. Don't worry, I have something else to do. So I'll hang up first, I said, and then hung up the phone. David opened his eyes at this time and said calmly, actually, being a bit older doesn't matter. It's better than taking the wrong path. I replied casually. When I got back to my place, I looked at the text messages bombarding my phone and frowned slightly. I knew my parents meant well. They had never treated me poorly in terms of upbringing or living, but in a traditional family, they always believed that women could only achieve stability through marriage and hoped that I would follow the normal path of getting married and having children. When I resigned from the big company for Alex, my parents opposed it and didn't think highly of Alex, a poor guy, and wanted me to break up with him. Over the years, as the Alex group has been booming, my parents' attitudes have changed. They tried to ease the relationship between Alex and me and even lowered themselves to serve Alex tea and water, repeatedly reminding Alex to marry me. Unfortunately, Alex always found excuses to put it off. Now it's all over. I moved all my things out of the wedding house and submitted my resignation letter to the Alex group. Alex was willing to buy out my shares and transferred the money into my account. When I walked out of the Alex group with my things, I felt extremely relaxed. But unexpectedly, I saw Lily at the elevator entrance. How could she still be in the Alex group? I sized her up. The woman wasn't wearing a work uniform and didn't have a work badge. She was carrying a thermal bag in her hand. Lily seemed to want to show off to me on purpose. She blocked my way, looking proud. So what if you've been with Alex for so many years? Emily, in the end, you were still kicked out. Taking advantage of the fact that there were no outsiders, Lily didn't hide her malice towards me at all. I wasn't one to be bullied. I just smiled faintly and said, even if I leave Alex, the stocks and dividends of the Alex group can support me for a lifetime. What about you, Miss Lily? I pretended to remember something. I looked at Lily's thermal bag and seemed to be very kind in reminding her. When I came out just now, I saw the new secretary beside Alex. She's really pretty and brought her own food to the company to invite Alex to eat together. I'm afraid Alex might not be able to eat your food, Miss Lily. Lily's face looked unpleasant upon hearing this. My words hit the mark, piercing through her false exterior. While waiting for the elevator, I looked at Lily and sneered. Miss Lily, since you like Alex so much, you must hold on to him tightly. After all, I still have money even if I leave him. But you'll have nothing if you leave Alex. And now that Alex likes to play around, how many little lovers are vying to be with him? With these words, Lily was left speechless, tightly gripping the thermal bag in her hand. Just then, Alex came out of the office behind. The new pretty secretary followed him, looking at Alex with a flirtatious expression. When her eyes met Lily's, she immediately showed hostility. Lily was almost furious, but she had to suppress her anger and question Alex. Alex, who is she? Alex glanced at Lily indifferently. Another little lover like you. Alex, how could you treat me like this? Lily was on the verge of a breakdown, but Alex still didn't give her much attention. Instead, he looked straight at me. This is yours. I'm returning it to you. I looked at the red bracelet in his hand, my thoughts drifting back. When Alex and I first started our business, we were threatened by competitors. Alex was hit by a car and was admitted to the ICU. The doctors had done everything they could and said the rest was up to fate. In my desperation, I sought solace in a holy sanctuary, climbing its 1,800 stone steps one by one, each a silent prayer. For 3 days, my knees bruised and my heart raw, I pleaded for the heavens to spare Alex's life. This prayer bead bracelet, now warm in my hand, was blessed during that vigil, a tangible link between my plea and the divine. Unfortunately, the true feelings of the past had now turned into a sharp blade, piercing my heart painfully. After taking it back, I threw it into the trash can next to the elevator. This thing is rotten. Just throw it away. Seeing this, Alex's face became even colder. Emily, do we really have to come to this? They're just for my amusement. As long as you're willing, I can make them all leave immediately. They won't threaten your position at all. Hearing this, I clearly saw the two women behind turn pale. Alex meant what he said. Lily seemed to realize her position and looked at me fearfully. I didn't know what means she had used to stay by Alex's side, but I no longer wanted to be involved in Alex's emotional entanglements. Alex, we're broken up. The elevator arrived as I spoke. I left only this sentence, and then turned to leave. The news that I had resigned from the Alex group and stepped down from the senior management of the Alex group spread quickly. My parents knew about Alex's affair and didn't say much more, but then they became worried about my marriage again. I planned to take a break before entering the workplace. But I didn't feel relaxed. My parents arranged numerous blind dates for me, and my time was almost completely filled. Whenever I wanted to reject my parents' kindness, but when I saw their worried eyes and heard their admonitions, my heart was filled with guilt. After all, it was me who was determined to be with Alex, and I even ignored my parents' opposition, gave up my comfortable life, and endured hardships with Alex. In the end, it was my parents who couldn't bear it anymore and scraped together the start-up funds for me to make my life a little better. Even my younger brother, despite his tough talk, couldn't stand to see me wronged. So, facing their concerns and the painstakingly arranged blind dates, I couldn't say no. But I was also tired of meeting all kinds of men. Most of they either had bad character or quirky personalities. Until one day, I saw a familiar figure sitting in front of me. Mr. David. I looked at the rose pinned to the man's shirt in surprise. Was David my blind date today? I remembered my parents saying that today's blind date was the nephew of a certain friend. Emily, long time no see. David sat down with a smile. I couldn't believe that a president of a company would come on a blind date. I suspected that he had other motives, but my expression remained calm. Long time no see. David was straightforward. I wasn't planning to get married these years, but my family has been pressuring me hard, which has seriously affected my life, and I can't push it off. So, his dark eyes looked straight at me, and his gentle and handsome face showed a strong sense of possessiveness. My heart skipped a beat, and I pretended to drink water to cover it up. So what? I think Emily is also troubled by the pressure to get married, right? David quickly regained his expression, as if what I had just seen was an illusion. The man shrugged slightly. So, would Emily be willing to pretend to marry me to satisfy our family's marriage demands? Hearing this, I frowned. With Mr. David's status, there must be a lot of women willing to even have a fake marriage, right? Why did David choose me? I had indeed used David as a shield before, but that was just to make Alex jealous. In private, David and I were just, well, coordinated business partners. Nothing more. David smiled, but there aren't many smart women, and even fewer who don't covet the David family's property. And the Emily I happen to know is very suitable. We both have what the other needs. I understood. David didn't want to get into trouble. If David wanted to find a wealthy lady of equal status, why would they be willing to have a fake marriage for no reason? If it was a woman from an ordinary family, how could she not be tempted by the David family's huge fortune? David needed a qualified wife who could play a good diplomatic role, not to invite trouble into his house. And I was the qualified candidate after his selection. This kind of interest-based relationship seemed more in line with the adult world. I said calmly, "What's in it for me if I marry you?" The smile on David's face grew wider. He knew I was wavering. The status and position that Mrs. David should have, and I will transfer the monthly allowance to your card on time. Deal. I reached out my hand. Pleasure doing business. Mr. David. David shook my hand. Pleasure doing business. The wedding date was set. Neither my parents nor my younger brother expected that I would suddenly get married right after the blind date, and it was at the end of this month. Emily, why don't we think about it again? We should get to know each other for a while. There's no need to get married so soon, my mother said, trying to persuade me at the last moment. The two men in the family also nodded frequently. Why don't you and Mr. David date for a few more months? I had dated Alex for 6 years, and after going through so much, we still didn't get married. But now, I was getting married to David just a few days after the blind date, which made them even more worried. Obviously, my parents had a lot more gray hair. Looking at the gold jewelry and gifts sent by the David family, I gently patted my mother's hand and comforted them instead. It's okay, David and I have known each other for over a year. This blind date was just an opportunity. We found that we get along very well. Plus, we're not young anymore, so we're in a hurry to get married. As for the relationship, we can cultivate it after marriage. But after hearing what I said, the family's expressions became even more solemn. After a long time, my younger brother sighed. Well, if he treats you badly in the future, come back home. I'll teach him a lesson. My mother also compromised. The David family is quite polite. Marriage is no small matter. Your father and I will keep an eye on the wedding. I hope nothing goes wrong and you can get married in style. The money given by the David family, my parents put it on a separate card and gave it to me, telling me to use it well for our new family and giving me a lot of advice. Although the wedding was held in a hurry, the wedding scene was not perfunctory. It was obvious that a lot of thought had been put into it. Before I got married to David, my family had inquired about David's family and character. They just didn't expect that the distant friend actually had such an outstanding nephew, and he was arranged to go on a blind date with me. Maybe Mr. David has liked our Emily for a long time, and specially asked a friend to introduce him. My mother whispered. My younger brother was lost in thought. It was a grand wedding. Countless roses were spread on both sides. The fountain sparkled in the sunlight. A large number of guests arrived, watching as I walked towards David, arm in arm with my father. Looking at that imposing figure, I suddenly felt nervous. The man stood in the backlit place, wearing a well-tailored, high-end black suit. He slowly appeared in my sight, as if shining all over. Impossible to ignore. I clenched my fingers, feeling a tightening in my heart. Was I really going to marry David? From now on, I'll entrust my daughter to you. If you dare to treat her badly, I'll come and take her away myself, my father said seriously, slowly placing my hand in David's. David also looked solemn. Don't worry, father-in-law. I will take good care of Emily. Next came the part where the priest officiated, and we exchanged wedding rings. I looked at the multi-million-dollar ruby diamond ring on my left ring finger. Looking up, I met David's smiling eyes, and my heart suddenly settled down. How bad could it be? Even if there was no love, I wouldn't lose money. I picked up the prepared men's ring and was about to put it on David's hand when suddenly a harsh sound of tires screeching was heard. Emily, how dare you? Alex drove into the wedding scene, his face furious. He seemed not to have expected that I would get married less than a month after we broke up. His eyes were so red that they seemed to be bleeding. At this point, I looked at Alex calmly. I was about to put the ring on David's hand unhurriedly when suddenly a bouquet of flowers was thrown over. Watch out! David immediately protected me behind him, and the ring fell to the ground. It was Alex who threw the bouquet. The guests seemed stunned by this change and also recognized Alex. The two presidents were in a confrontation at the wedding, shouting the same woman's name. I could almost predict the news headlines for tomorrow. I couldn't help but rub my forehead, trying to minimize the public opinion. Alex, are you perhaps blaming me for not inviting you to the wedding? Now that you've had your outburst, let's forget about it as friends. Come, sit down and have a glass of wedding wine. But Alex didn't appreciate it at all. He clenched his fingers, his eyes blood red, staring at me intently. Come with me, Emily. You're not allowed to marry him. I looked back at him calmly. Alex, you must be joking. I then turned to the security guards. Alex is drunk. Take him to the backstage to rest. The security guards had long wanted to take Alex away. Hearing this, they immediately stepped forward. "Sir, let's talk back there." But this time, Alex had also brought a lot of people. Seeing that I was determined, he gave a cold smile. "Smash it. I'll reward $10,000 for every item smashed." Immediately, the bodyguards behind him started to act quickly. The guests were frightened and couldn't help but step aside one after another. The security guards were evacuating the crowd, controlling the scene, and at the same time, mobilizing more security to stop Alex's men. For a while, the wedding was in chaos. The faces of my family and the David family were not good. Under David's arrangement, they were sent to the backstage. David pursed his thin lips and looked at me. The ring wasn't put on. He picked up the fallen man's ring and placed it in my hand. I firmly put the ring on his hand. The wedding was smashed to pieces by Alex, but it didn't affect the wedding ceremony between David and me. Alex watched from the audience, his eyes red with envy, but at this time, he was held down by several security guards and couldn't come up. "Emily, how dare you? What's so good about this pretty boy? Are you that desperate for a man? We just broke up less than a month ago, and you've already found someone else so quickly." Alex had never been so out of control and hysterical. If it were the old me, I would have felt sorry for him, but now David was my husband, even if only in name, and I would defend his dignity and propriety. "Alex, what right do you have to talk about me now?" I looked at Alex with cold eyes. "Don't forget, we've broken up completely. David is my husband. Watch your mouth." David took my hand and protected me behind him. Compared to my coldness, the man still looked gentle on the surface, but his attitude was firm. "For what Alex did today, I will send a lawyer to sue. Emily is now Mrs. David. Alex, I hope you can recognize your status as an ex-boyfriend soon." Alex watched us acting in harmony and could only rage in frustration. "Emily, if you dare to marry him, I'll kill him." We ignored him. David had already called the police. Next, the lawyer and the police would handle it, and the rest was left to the security personnel. The man took my hand and walked to the inner hall. There was still a grand banquet, and the guests had been calmed down. The previous episode seemed not to have happened. David took me to toast and introduced me to his family relatives and some important business partners one by one. The day after the wedding, David and I got our marriage certificate. Alex was detained in the police station and couldn't come out to stop us. I realized that Alex probably wouldn't let me go easily. I found a lawyer in advance to write a prenuptial agreement. I didn't forget why David married me. The contents of the agreement were notarized. Except for the monthly allowance David gave me, I would not encroach on any property of the David Group or David. But when I handed this signed prenuptial agreement to David, the man tore it up and threw it into the trash can. "We don't need such a document between us." Hearing this, I looked puzzled. Wasn't the purpose of David marrying me just this? A qualified wife who wouldn't affect his property? "Emily," the man suddenly put his hands on my shoulders, his eyes burning. After years of experience, I almost had an intuitive sense of foreboding. I immediately avoided David's gaze and changed the subject. "I'm tired. I'll go upstairs and rest first." David let go of his hands and watched me go upstairs, his eyes dark. Alex's revenge came as expected. The David Group lost all its business to the Alex Group. Alex's self-destructive obsession to ruin the David Group at any cost seemed absolutely. I went to see David worriedly, but he told me not to worry. "I'm not the kind of person who will sit and wait for disaster. Alex won't be complacent for long. David comforted me instead. But I was still worried. This matter started because of me. Otherwise, let's get a divorce. This was the grudge between Alex and me. I didn't want to drag David down. David pursed his lips and looked at me, his eyes dark. Emily, don't mention divorce so easily. I was at a loss, afraid of scaring me. David softened his tone a lot. He got up and pressed me onto the seat. Just be my wife well. You don't need to get involved in these matters. But these things were all caused by me. How could I not care? So when Alex asked me to meet, I still went. Afraid that Alex would go crazy again, I carefully hired a few bodyguards to follow me, and the meeting place was also a public place. Emily, you're really proud now. Two outstanding men are fighting over you. Are you very proud of yourself? Before I entered the private room, Lily, who was standing at the door, said jealously. I remained silent. Noticing her slightly bulging belly, I immediately retorted, "This is also my ability. I can't compare to Miss Lily, who tries to secure her position by getting pregnant. But Alex doesn't fall for this. There are plenty of beautiful women willing to have children for him. Alex still hasn't prepared to give you a proper status, has he?" Hearing this, Lily's face became even more distorted. I walked into the private room. It was much quieter inside. From the moment I entered, Alex's eyes were fixed on me. When he saw the wedding ring on my hand, he was even more deeply hurt. "Emily," he said with difficulty, "are you really going to be with David?" I sat across from him and said calmly, "Can't you see? Alex had personally smashed the wedding, although the man was bailed out of the police station by the Alex Group's lawyers. I heard from David that Alex had paid several million in compensation. I came straight to the point. What do you want to do to let the David family go? Do you have to keep pestering me?" Alex took a deep breath, suppressing his anger. "Divorce David. I can give you everything he can give you. Emily, I still love you. We have 6 years of relationship, which no one can compare to." The other party calmed down and looked at me with a loving expression again. Looking at my former lover, I only felt that he was unrecognizable. How could Alex say he loved me while having other women on the side and getting one of them pregnant? I had never found Alex so disgusting. So what if it's 6 years? Didn't you cheat without hesitation? Alex, Lily was pregnant. Do you still want me to marry you and raise your illegitimate child? I sneered and splashed the cold tea in Alex's face. I was too naive. I didn't expect your shamelessness to refresh my perception of you. I picked up my bag and was about to leave. Alex, in a sorry state, wanted to stop me, but was stopped by the bodyguards I brought. Lily had been waiting outside for a long time. Seeing me come out, she was afraid that I would take Alex away and immediately rushed in. But Alex was still in a rage. It seemed that he remembered that if it weren't for Lily's instigation, I and he wouldn't have broken up. He immediately vented his anger on Lily. "You bitch." He slapped Lily hard. The woman immediately let out a scream and fell to the ground, bleeding. Alex's assistant immediately rushed over, called the emergency number, and held Alex back. Looking at the chaos behind me, I didn't want to get involved and left by car. The Alex group was soon counterattacked by the David group. Alex liked to snatch the project corporations of the David group. David laid out a plan. In the end, the Alex group got a seriously loss, making real estate project, and its capital chain was broken. It soon faced a bankruptcy crisis. The next time I heard about Alex, it was when Alex planned to marry a rich heiress to save the company, but was suddenly hit by his mistress and sent to the intensive care unit. I was slightly curious and perked up my ears, looking at David. And then, why did he stop talking halfway? David smiled and rubbed my head. That mistress, you also know. It's Alex's former secretary, Lily. I heard that she was beaten by Alex and lost her child and her fertility. Alex originally promised to marry her to suppress this matter, but he broke his promise. Lily's love for Alex turned to hate, and that's how this happened. The doctor said Alex's legs were severely fractured, and he would never be able to stand up again. His face was also disfigured by glass shards in the car accident. Emily, do you want to go and see him? David's tone was a bit tentative. I shook my head. No, he has his own family. We've already broken up. Alex was now reaping what he sowed. Presumably, all his mistresses had run away, and Lily would be sentenced to at least life imprisonment for attempted murder. I stood up and unexpectedly saw a familiar photo in David's study. Isn't this our high school graduation photo? I picked it up and looked at David with a puzzled expression. How do you have this? Looking at this photo, I seemed to be lost in memories. Because I was a nerd in high school and college, I didn't have many friends. The little fat guy next to me was my playmate in high school. Maybe you should call me by another name, Tim. David smiled. What are you talking about? I frowned and looked at him, then at Tim in the photo. I couldn't believe it. I remembered clearly that my high school playmate Tim was a 400-plus pound fat guy. Otherwise, he wouldn't have been teased and isolated by almost everyone in the class. I tried to help him lose weight but failed. I heard that because of his illness, Tim had to take a lot of medicine every day after my parents divorced. I followed my mother, so at that time I used the name my mother gave me. Later, my illness gradually got better, and I lost weight. David looked at me with burning eyes. My mind suddenly cleared. It seemed that I thought of something. I put down the photo in my hand. So David had recognized me from the beginning, and the marriage was also his intention. Before, you promised to be my bride. Now it's too late to regret. We've already got the marriage certificate. David's eyes moved slightly. He hugged the stunned me, his tone smiling, and rubbed his cheek against mine. I calmed down and gently pushed David's face away. That was just a joke. You sleep in the side room this week. I need to rethink our relationship. David refused to give up. Emily, we're married. The man's eyes were sincere and passionate, like a sunflower in the sun. I was silent for a while, thinking of Tim in my memory. The honest and chubby boy seemed to overlap with the man in front of me. I let the man hold my hand as he whispered in my ear. It's been a long time since we got our marriage certificate. It's time for us to sleep in the same bed ...